Hello to my water signs Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Welcome to the Sagittarius full moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello Cancer Rising, welcome to Gemini season, and this is your reading for the Sagittarius full moon, which is happening very soon on Thursday the 23rd of May at 11:55 p.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So 5 minutes before midnight there's going to be a great big bright Sagittarius full moon. So I'd encourage you to stand underneath it. I'd encourage you to absorb the love from the moon as you do as a Cancer. And I'd like for you to think about the sign Sagittarius, what it means, and also its relationship to your sense of duty, your sense of purpose, and your commitment in this life. What I know about Sagittarius is that they're an incredibly magical sign, but unlike Aries and Leo, there's something about Sagittarius that has learned about the magical properties of life, and they've confined them or contained them into something that feels like candlelight. I always see an altar when I see Sagittarius lit up with candles in all different colors and sizes, but I see that action that human beings have and their relationship with fire, which can be ferocious. It can provide warmth. It can be to destroy. It can also be to pray and to connect with their spirituality. And so thinking about your sixth house, which is probably an easy way to think about it, would be your house of service. You know, there's repetition, there's practice that happens in the sixth house, and there's definitely a selfless act of service that occurs there too. What relationship does that place for you have to your magical possibilities? What does your spirit speak to you in moments of repetition? And that could be, chopping vegetables, that could be exercising, that could be, lifting, whatever it is that is sort of occurring for you on repetition in this life. How do you bring the most of yourself to it? How do you bring the magic to that? For a Cancer rising, Sagittarius is very practical. The magic is very practical. I really like that about your chart. So in this moment, and as boring as sometimes the sixth house can feel, where it's sort of like, oh God, I've got to do this or that or the other, I think for a Cancer rising, there is something kind of, there's a knowing about that some other folks might have difficulty with, in that, chopping the wood is sacred, making dinner is sacred. All of the menial tasks in life that we go through, that we have to, for duty and for survival, you can bring a bit of that candlelight to it. You can bring a bit of that magic to it. A lot of Cancer risings I know do make magic out of the simplest things. They can make magic out of nothing. Any little act is an act of magical possibility. So when you're doing your work with the moon in Sagittarius, I'd like for you to keep in the back of your mind the shift that we're about to go through. So over on the other side of the zodiac, the planet Jupiter, which brings hope and faith and optimism and potential to our lives, is about to leave Taurus, which on your birth chart is your sense of the humanitarian spirit, your sense of community and good fortune in friendships. Now, there's been an emphasis on this part of your life for a year, and with Uranus in that space too, there may have been some real changes into the way that your life is structured or your friendship groups are structured. You may feel that you've been pulling back from certain people, or there's been an emphasis on a different group of people in your life. There's been a sort of collective revolution that you can feel, and so you've been measuring your energy as to who it is that you devote your time to and expend your energy with. That's been the spotlight that Jupiter has been bringing through your friendship circles. Jupiter wants to expand, wants to grow, wants to emphasize. And so in that process, there may have been moments where you've been like, okay, well, this is not how I can operate in community anymore. This is what I need. It can be daunting at times because sometimes when we're so used to something, we can feel worried, when we can feel it shifting. A very clever friend of mine said to me very recently that everything's made of sand. And so I like to hold that philosophy in my back pocket as I move forward too, because there's been a lot of changes and shifts in the way that I roll around in community too. And for a long time, I felt desperate and scared of those changes. I was really worried about what I was losing, or what was leaving me, or where I didn't fit into anymore. That's been like a major story of my life for some years now, has been this round peg in a square hole. Like, where do I actually fit? Where do I belong? And it's been something to contend with. And maybe the reason I say that to you, Cancer Rising, is because this rebellion, this revolution that you've been seeing and that you want to call in to your sense of community and friendship and you know, family, proverbial, that has been really emphasized for the past year. Since about, I think, May last year, when Jupiter entered Taurus, there's been sort of, you know, an examination onto how these, friendship circles roll, how they operate, what's your place in them. The good news is, before Jupiter enters into Gemini, and we'll get there in a minute, put a pin in it, Venus, the planet of love and beauty and connection and artistry, has just met up with Jupiter. So Jupiter is expanding upon all the pleasure principles of your friendships. If you remember at the last horoscope, the Taurus new moon that we were speaking about, and I did speak about Venus and their presence in Taurus, and I was speaking about Nigella Lawson and that beautiful ceremony of committing to pleasure for pleasure's sake. Hopefully there's an emphasis here in your friendship group right before this full moon that you can just twig, just be like, oh, that's right, I'm rolling with these people because they bring me pleasure, they bring joy to my life. I'm rolling with these people and these communities because I feel the fertile soil that these relationships are sown into. This feels like there's room for growth here. Jupiter loves to grow, Venus loves beauty. So that's kind of just like a bit of a metaphor about the garden of your 11th house, and how, as different as it might look to the way that it did before, there is going to be some future growth there too. So that conjunction happens, and then we have the full moon in Sagittarius. Venus does some lovely stuff over with Neptune in Pisces. I don't wish to confuse you too much, but there's an aspect that Venus is perfect at. It's called a sextile, which means that 60 degrees away, the planets can speak to each other too. So earth sign to water sign, there's harmony that Venus, because Venus kind of like loves diversity, loves the difference in people, loves the difference in nature, you know? And so the sextile, it's different elements, but it is a line of support. And Neptune is the magic maker that's been resting in your 9th house of your spirituality and your religious ideas. Religious has a funny connotations, doesn't it? So let's say spirituality, what you believe about your soul and about your, how you connect to your spirituality. And Neptune being incredibly imaginative and incredibly sort of illusionary too. You know, there's, you know how sometimes in life you're sort of like, wow, I can't believe that's why I do this stuff, because of the wild coincidences. But sometimes in life there's parts of our spirit that's just sort of like on a wing and a prayer. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but on a bit of magic, I'm going to. That's what this Neptune in Pisces kind of feeling in a relationship with Venus in your community. So think about that. Think about who in your friendships you can speak about spirituality with too. That just is a nice little pleasant line of support right before this full moon too. Because the 6th house, repetition, service, all of that sort of thing, can speak to our health, to our body and its ecosystems. So we want some good support there, and maybe this spotlight of the moon might be shining on parts of your physical health that need some tending to as well. So that's that. Then on the 26th of May, Jupiter will enter into Gemini. Now this is a 12-year story. So there might be some extra ways that you can flesh out this astrology if you cast your mind back to June 2012 into July of 2013. That was the last time, the last bracket of time that Jupiter was in Gemini. Now, unfortunately, Jupiter gets really uncomfortable in Gemini because they'd much prefer to be in either Sagittarius or in Pisces, where anything is possible and where there's courage, optimism. In Gemini, Jupiter tends to sort of work in all manner of different directions and sometimes can really exaggerate the shadow. So looking at your birth chart, Cancer Rising, Gemini is the sign that rules your 12th house, which is your unconscious world. It's the house or the sign that was rising before you were born. So you're a Cancer Rising, so on that eastern horizon it was Cancer that was rising, cresting over that horizon. Before you were born it was Gemini. And so it can link us to past incarnations if that's something that you believe in. You don't have to. It can link you to your dreams and the unconscious world, how you relate to the parts of your psyche that still operate when your body is unconscious. Everyone's got a different philosophy for what that might mean, and it's up to you to pick which one it is. Sometimes in life there's things that happen to us and it kind of feels like out of our depth or control. It's just, it feels fated in some way. The word fate is a good one to ascribe to the 12th house. So in thinking about the fated nature of your life, what was occurring June 2012 to July 2013? What can you remember about that bracket of time? What was being exaggerated, perhaps in your dreams? If you keep dream journals, I'd encourage you to read back to that period of time. What were you being presented with in life? What was unconscious that was rapidly becoming conscious? That can be scary work sometimes too. It can be really confronting to contend with that part of our unconscious reality. You survived through it in June to July of 2013. And this isn't to say it's going to be the same, but we're coming back to Jupiter in Gemini. So there's going to be an exaggeration about your relationship with your unconscious self, for good and for bad. So you do with it, use it the way that you feel that you can. What else? I might get you some tarot actually, Cancer Rising, as we wrap this one up. On the 30th of May, so a few days after Jupiter enters into Gemini, and they'll be there until next year, until the middle of next year. So this is another 12-month story-ish of this unconscious private work. But on the 30th of May, our bravery contends with our pain. So we'll cast our attention to your public-facing self, Cancer Rising, your legacy, what you wish to leave behind, all of that eclipse work that we've been doing with Aries. Mars brings bravery, and Mars is really great in Aries. So, yeah, perhaps there's been some quieter moments that you've been contending with as you've been sort of absorbing the astrology, as you've been recognizing these patterns in your life. Maybe it's time for a bit of valor as far as that wounding is concerned. It's like, well, let's look at the tarot to finish this off because it's telling something quite lovely. Some people are really gifted quite naturally at parental instinct. Some people are just really skilled at relating to the young, at protecting and tending to the needs of the vulnerable. Some folks pass that information on to their young ones. And so that's a gift that can be passed down from generation to generation. Some folks are breaking a cycle. Some folks are the first one that this instinct seemed to have occurred to. And so while they're nurturing, they're contending with a lack in their life of guidance. And it's a process, isn't it? When I see this pain in Aries, I see something about self-determination and something about being autonomous, and the pain that can arise in our psyche when we realize that we had to. Perhaps it probably wasn't a choice of ours, but we had to do so. We weren't with readily accessible, nurturing, loving care from some folks. But this person that I'm describing is sitting right in the center of this reading, Cancer Rising. So it's here, it's present right here, right now. Maybe not in the past, but right here in this moment, it's alive in the reading. It's taken a lot of work to get here. It's taken a lot of truth to be brave enough to face. There's been a lot of questions and a lot of worry and a lot of almost a feeling of like sort of brazenness about the truth too. You really had to excavate what was happening in the past to bring it forward and to air it out, to get it out there. But it's led you to this point where there's that nurturing, gentle, caring feeling once more. Perhaps you're realizing to yourself that maybe as much as you thought that you didn't pick up some of this from the past, it's come from somewhere. It's come from somewhere, and it's in you right now. And it will help you with this ending that you're contending with. It will help you with this last dance, this last hurrah. This has been a long time in the making, Cancer Rising, and this has been something that has been really difficult and exhausting, and it's taken every single magical capacity that you've had to be able to get it over the line. But the line is coming fast. And I think that maybe when it does, and when you cross that line, you'll be able to say to yourself, wow, shit, on a wing and a prayer, smell of an oily rag, I did it. I did it. And this grounded, nurturing, loving feeling at the very center of this will be your final results. That's something that I believe so wholeheartedly, and that is just a cold hard fact. We take nothing with us in this life. What we do take is the love, and we don't know what happens to that love, but it goes somewhere. It expands and grows somewhere. This 12th house Gemini work might be really beneficial for you over the next 12 months. Thinking about mortality, thinking about endings, thinking about lessons learned in this life, thinking about what is carried forth into the next. You don't have to believe that so literally. That's just a sort of philosophy, you know. None of us really know for sure what happens. But I think that the Queen of Pentacles, the Queen of grounded, regenerative, restorative love, is one of the levels that we want to master in this life, if we can all possibly do it. It doesn't have to be so literally as becoming a parent, but it's harnessing that ability to nurture that which needs it selflessly and with love and care. That's your reading, Cancer Rising. If you're still here with me, can you put a love heart in the comments, please? It doesn't matter which color. You can describe why you picked the color though, if you'd like to. Tell me all about it. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, they look something like this. So you can make your appointment at umaruby.com. And if I've not met you before, pick this spirit reading. If I have read for you before and you'd like to see me again, choose the truth, love, growth, femme, or magic reading. I'll be with you in a couple of weeks, and we'll speak about the Gemini new moon. We'll speak about planting a seed somewhere in the unconscious for you. We'll start to think about how we can really work with the memories of June 2012 to July 2013, what that period of our life represented to us, and how it's colored and affected our unconscious, and how it will continue and start a new story together moving forward. Take it easy, Cancer. My love always. Hello, Scorpio Rising. Welcome to Gemini season. And this is your reading for the Sagittarius full moon happening very, very soon on Thursday, the 23rd of May at 11:55 p.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So 5 minutes before midnight. Got there just in time. I've got some information that leads us up to this full moon, and I've got some information that takes us into June as well. So stick by me if you're listening to this a little after the moon. It doesn't matter. We're kind of sitting at another page that's about to be turned, Scorpio rising. So we'll put a pin in in Sagittarius for a minute. We'll put a pin in the full moon. We're going to speak about Gemini, which exists on the opposite side of the zodiac to Sagittarius. This is where the sun is right now, Gemini season. A few days after this full moon, though, we're moving into a new story, a new shift in the outer planets of our astrology. So Jupiter, who's in Taurus currently, will move into Gemini on the 26th of May. The last time that Jupiter was in Gemini was from June of 2012 to July of 2013. And so there's something that, this is one way to read astrology. It's not sort of like it's going to, happen all again. But when we think about our lives with these themes and recall what occurred in the past, we can sometimes get a handle on what similarities or current themes are occurring in our life right now. For you on your birth chart, Gemini rules the 8th house, which is our house of collaboration. It's where we invest in the energy of somebody else. And when we do that, we learn the profundity of having to say goodbye to that investment, to that connection, that bond. The 8th house can speak very sincerely to grief on multiple levels. And Gemini is a sign of the mind, a sign of the intellect. It's an air sign. It's twins too. So there's a continual conversation that occurs in Gemini very, very quickly. There's lots of options being reviewed and lots of opinions being gathered and advice being given in Gemini. Jupiter, the planet, has a difficult time in Gemini. Jupiter's much better in Sagittarius, in the opposition, and in Pisces too. Because in Pisces, anything is possible. And in Sagittarius, we hold out hope, don't we? In Gemini, Jupiter can expand and grow and extrapolate that conversation, that communication, that anxiety, perhaps in some way. And so when I think about Jupiter in Gemini globally as a group of us rather than individual birth charts, what we're moving into right now is an examination, an exaggeration on our ability to communicate, connect, converse the world over. I think that over the next 12 months, there's going to be a real analysis on the after effects of the social media culture, how we have access to everyone's private lives at all times, or lines of communication. We can message or call anyone from anywhere whenever we want to. The opinions that are sort of formed on the basis of the mask of social media too. There's a public perception that everyone's putting out there, and there can be either a criticism of that public perception. There can be a comparison to that too, which is really damaging. I think here in Australia, our Prime Minister has just said that social media should be banned for everyone under 16. I'm not so sure that that's a direct moment of his government policy. It's an opinion, I think, as far as I can see it at this point. But there's further study going into the psychological effects of social media, and they've been ongoing. And it's reaching this sort of crescendo point just as Jupiter is expanding these topics around communication and around messaging. So that's one sort of kind of coincidence, because if we think back to June 2012, July 2013 as a collective, I mean, that was when my smartphone was firmly in my hand. That's when I was using it and figuring it out and connecting and making, maintaining friendships, maintaining relationships that were far flung across the world. I was putting a public facing self out there and developing my business. Back in the day, it was a different work that I'm doing now. But you can see there was an exaggeration of our ability to communicate with each other. As Jupiter re-enters Gemini, there's an examination of the after effects of this culture. Now, I'm not saying here nor there. I believe in the great things that can happen with this sort of connection. I can also starkly see the damage that it's done and continues to do. And I think as paranoia around artificial intelligence and deep fakes and all of those sorts of stuff, people are finding it very difficult to trust these platforms, finding it very difficult to land on who to trust or what the truth is out there. We've all become quite paranoid, and conspiracies are rife. So that's just one global way of reading Jupiter in Gemini. For you very personally, Scorpio rising, the 8th house is, it's gentle terrain that we tread. So you don't have to reveal the grief that you were experiencing back then. That's not to say that you're going to experience grief of the weight that you did back then. But the context or the definition of the 8th house as far as collaboration, as far as my resources are invested into this joint enterprise. This is what I can get from you. This is what I receive. This is what you receive from me. How are we going to work on this together? This is the conversation that we're having. And Jupiter is going to exacerbate and exaggerate the promise of these things and also the pitfalls, the danger of these things too. Jupiter in Gemini is unstable, so we'll work with that together. When I think about my life from June 2012 to July 2013, diggity, I can speak to you about all manner of instability and polarization and conflicting feelings. I can also speak to a really beautiful point where it was all rung in home, but that's my birth chart specifically. Let's talk about the astrology that leads us up to this full moon in Sagittarius. So we're going to refocus from the 8th house in Gemini into your 2nd house in Sagittarius, which is your money, your value, your resources, and your talents, what you intend to do and how you intend to resource yourself in this life. Sagittarius is a sign of immense magical possibility and great creativity and great optimism, which is why Jupiter is its cheerleader, its guiding light. The full moon is a spotlight in this world for you, Scorpio rising. So chalk it up, whatever you like to celebrate or whatever grief you need to let out about where you'd prefer to be right now as opposed to where you are. All of these emotions are welcome at this full moon, and there's no judgment, and there's, the moon moves real quick. There's time to make amends or make something of this moment too. In the lead up to this full moon, on the same day, on the 23rd of May, Venus is doing some beautiful work with Jupiter, who is still in Taurus. So we're in your relationship zone. Directly across the way from Scorpio, we have Taurus. We have all of this upending, this revolution of relationship styles and shapes that you've been going through for some time. We have Jupiter expanding and exaggerating all of these themes for the last year. They're about to leave your 7th house and enter into your 8th. Before they do, Venus, the planet of love and beauty and connection, meets up with Jupiter. So there's an exaggeration on the pleasures of your relationships. There's an exaggeration on the love and the beauty of the relationships that you're cultivating in this life. Hopefully some of that sweetness that Venus is offering your 7th house right now, and remember that Venus loves it in Taurus. That's where they do their best work. They're in Libra. Hopefully some of that encouragement and that beauty can be brought into this collaborative effort in the 8th house. Hopefully there's something of commitments that you can feel. They might be overwhelming, but you're ready to sort of take them. And knowing what you know now about what occurred in 2012, 2013, knowing what you know now, this astrology will hit differently. It always does. But it's such a great tool to use in hindsight, to recall what we were experiencing then as opposed to what we're experiencing now. This sweetness and this exaggeration, this exertion of love, I really like for you, Scorpio rising. In tandem with the conjunction with Jupiter, so the great exaggeration of love and beauty in your relationships. Venus is also doing their specialty, which is a sextile, down to Neptune in Pisces, in your creative self-expression. So there's something that feels really magical, really dreamy, perhaps in the way that you're expressing your love with one another. This full moon in Sagittarius, as much as it's highlighting and spotlighting your coin, your values, your money, your talents, there's also this other astrology that's going on that is very sensual, very sweet, very beautiful. There might be something in common that you can find there. As a Scorpio rising, you can see the power of human connection, of sharing, expressing physical love. That might have something to do with the topics around talents and values as well. There might be a link there for you. I'm not sure. So that's the astrology. And then 26th, Jupiter enters into Gemini. So this is the new page that we get to start. We get to start ruminating on our lives in 2012, 2013, and thinking about the developments, thinking about the changes, thinking about the exaggeration in communication. On the 30th of the month, the 30th of May, Mars, your guiding light, your sword, your shield, is going to become exactly conjunct with Chiron in Aries. So this pain, this revelation, this urgency to heal is exacerbated. Now, Mars is your guiding light, it's Aries' guiding light too. So there's strength here. So when it comes to the unconscious wounding that we've been describing over the last months, when it comes to that sort of tenderness amidst all of this beautiful, expansive, pleasurable stuff that we've just brought up, there might be some moments for you, Scorpio rising, where the vulnerability and the pleasure is overwhelming, and it might perhaps highlight some of this wounding. But there's a bravery, there's a protection there with Mars that's shielding perhaps some of the fear around that. This is an ongoing process for a lot of us. These eclipses have really highlighted, pinpointed where our individual pain is laying. When we do that, we recognize it separate. The next thing we do is we come together and we share about that pain too, because we've got so much more in common than we think that we do. Let's get you some tarot, Scorpio rising. One more thing. On the 31st, so the day after Mars and Chiron, on the 31st of May, right before we enter into June, Mercury will form an exact conjunction with Uranus in your 7th house. So there'll be information, there'll be more that comes to you about the revolution of your relationship styles. Perhaps you'll be able to articulate yourself in a clearer way than perhaps you were able to before. Relationship styles are many and varied, and no one is the right way. You know, we don't fit into categories as easily as the powers that be would like us to. I think as a queer person, it's probably easier for me to speak to that because my relationship styles have never been the common parlance. But they evolve and change too, and you're probably experiencing a bit of that in your life at the moment, Scorpio rising, with this ever-present Uranian principle flipping the table on how you used to relate to people. You're relating to them now in a different way, but that changes. And I think that at this moment, set your body free. Realize that you are naked and unafraid, that you've got nothing to hide, that you've done nothing wrong, Scorpio rising, that you are beautiful in every facet, every formation, every configuration, every shape-shifting turn of your physical body. It's beautiful. And what you've been learning about the more difficult sides of our emotional capacity and the heartache, and perhaps what Jupiter is perhaps exaggerating here for you at this moment. There might be some feelings of grief that are sort of swelling, you know, like a tide. Realize that you've got nothing to be frightened of. Realize that if you have things to say sorry for, that you can. We're all doing our absolute best to heal from trauma. And we all must hold that fact in one hand, and in the other, we must hold the fact that sometimes our behavior has caused pain for others too. And that can be really jarring for some to exist in. But if we can provide it ourselves, if we can provide others with forgiveness, then we can provide ourselves with forgiveness. And in your natural state, when you're working from your heart, your love, when that's all you wish to share, you're beautiful. And this test that you've been through has been huge. And it's not the last one. There'll be more in this life, don't you worry. They're always testing us. But I think at this moment, Tarot just wants to say, well done. What you've recently discovered about yourself, or what you've recently contended with, has been a powerful move, Scorpio Rising. And you need to congratulate yourself, because that wasn't easy to stand up there and do what you did after such a long time of not doing it. But you did, and it was stunning. And you'll do it again. If ever you feel tested by this Jupiterian feeling in Gemini, if you feel that it's pressing your buttons, try and shift your mind into a space where it feels like practice, where it feels like conditioning. You know, there's never a moment in this life where it's all smooth sailing, when everything's great, done and dusted, lesson learned, let's go. We do come back to these places of vulnerability, or of tension, or of shame, or of anger. It's how we operate with these emotions in our evolution that makes the difference. And so if ever you feel tested, think about it as like you're conditioning yourself. You're in a sparring match, but in a way that is about practicing the maneuver, you know, rather than having to defend and fend off. It's a different feeling in the body when you can frame it in your mind in that way. That's it, Scorpio Rising. That's your reading. So much love to you. If you're still here, put a love heart in the comments, please. I want as much love as I can possibly muster from all of you. Tell me why you picked the color of the heart too. That'd be awesome. I will be with you soon to speak about the seeds that we can sow in Gemini. So after the influence of Jupiter, which will be long-standing, which will exist for the next 12 months, we have a Gemini new moon coming up. So there'll be a moment of potential for us to sow our seeds about future collaborations, about how we wish to invest ourselves, our energies in that of the other. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, they look like this. I'll draw you one and then read it to you on Zoom. So you can make your appointment at umoruby.com. If I've never read for you before, pick the spirit reading. That includes the drawing and includes the initial journey into your chart. If I have read for you before and you'd like to see me again, pick truth, magic, love, growth, or femme. You can read about it on my website. Choose a journey. We'll look at the astrology and we'll pull tarot together. Much love to you, Scorpio. I'll speak to you soon. You take care. Hello, Pisces Rising. Welcome to Gemini season and to your reading for the Sagittarius full moon, which is coming up super soon. Like, check the date. The 23rd of May, Thursday night at 5 minutes to midnight. We'll have a giant, great big Sagittarius full moon that will be lighting up your 10th house, public-facing self of career, legacy, all of that good stuff. So we'll get to that in a minute. To put a pin in that, because I wanted to speak to you about what happens in the prelude to this moment, and then in the aftermath. I've got some astrology here that takes us up to June the 1st. So stick with me. We're sitting at another chapter beginning. Page turned, you know. I've been saying that a lot lately, haven't I, Pisces? But it's because all of these outer planets are gradually shifting signs. It's specific to the astrology, what we're living through right now. They're like almost like dominoes shifting. And so with that kind of change in sort of communal perception, we enter into a new chapter. You can probably feel that even without the astrology. So many folks that I speak to are sort of like, wow, like life will never be the same. It's never felt like this before. Things are changing for good and for bad. You know, we've got to have both in this life. Hopefully you can find some of the good to hang on to as we get on the roller coaster. So, in the lead up to this full moon in Sagittarius, which, as I said, has lots of topics around your career, your public facing self, your legacy, a full moon is always a very emotional time, and it's a great opportunity for you to release. So if you've got something that you wanted to put out there, put it out there. If you've got some hang-ups that you can set down for a time and some forgiveness to give yourself about your perceived level of experience or progression in this life, you can do that too. Either way, it's going to be really beneficial and gorgeously emotional and all the rest of it. In the lead up to that, we have the planet Jupiter sitting right at the precipice between Taurus and Gemini. So Jupiter in Taurus for the last year has been emphasizing your language skills. It's been emphasizing the importance of your proverbial village, about how you've been sharing information, how you've been speaking to topics of healing, how you've been talking about it. Finally, this is what Jupiter has been really encouraging for the past 12 months in the sign of Taurus. And for some of us with Chiron in Taurus, it's been tetchy. There's been a lot of activation of our personal Chiron placement that has been very difficult. Beneficial, but difficult. Venus has been in Taurus for the last weeks and will meet up exactly with Jupiter at 29 degrees right before this full moon. So during the day on the 23rd, there's going to be a burst of sweetness, a burst of beauty, and a burst of like encouragement and love and pleasure that occurs in this third house. Literally, the way that I conceive this is that I've got a tarot class during the day on the day of the full moon, and I know what's coming for me. I just can't wait for it. And if I speak about the third house, I am speaking to the tarot. I am speaking to healing modalities that have a lot to do with voice rather than sort of academia. You could think about it in ways of like psychological therapy as opposed to psychiatric therapy. That could be one way to think about it. If we were on the healing bent of this thing. Doesn't have to be though. Then we have the full moon in Sagittarius. So we're sort of primed and we're geared for this moment of release. The beautiful thing about Jupiter and Venus, that moment of sweetness and beauty in language and sharing, it's actually forming one of Venus's specialties, which I don't often speak about. It's called a sextile. And Venus is the planet that does the sextile the best. But it's a matter of the planets being exactly or nearish enough, 60 degrees apart. So it's earth sign to water sign. Support from Venus into Pisces. And it's hitting Neptune, who is resting at 29 degrees of Pisces. And this got me thinking. Neptune's been in Pisces since 2012-ish, 2011, 2012. And it's on the borderline. Neptune is about to leave us. And it's going to be sad because it will never come back for us in this life, but we're going to like absorb and really kind of hold on to what we learned with the company of Neptune in Pisces. Neptune's the planet where magic happens, where delusion can occur. There's a grand magic trick that occurs with Neptune. So much stuff that we can't see, but it occurs and happens. And maybe think about your life from 2011 to now and all of the times that you could say with your hand on your heart, shit, I never thought in a million years that my life would take that turn. For good and for bad, you know, there's a danger sometimes with the deep blue sea. And that's what Neptune is so good at. But, you know, you sort of find your footing, as it were. You learn to swim. So this moment here, with this sextile from Venus, right before the full moon, it does feel really supportive to me. It feels really beautiful. Perhaps there'll be opportunities for you to realize the beauty in the story of your life this far, Pisces Rising. As difficult as it often can be for us, for everyone, there's something about this period of this chapter of time with Neptune in Pisces, creating the magic, creating the cushion, creating the barrier, as well as the sinkhole of addiction, you know, all of these different things, these try this, you know, all of this sort of really juicy kind of trippy stuff that Neptune's been doing. There has been some support there too. Neptune's really great for Pisces. In Pisces, anything is possible. We've got to remember that. Jupiter knows about this. Jupiter's our guiding light. So Jupiter and Venus with Neptune, it feels really Pisces to me. So right before this full moon in Sagittarius, hopefully you can look forward to just, and even if it's just a sort of like a, that's just a great thing to feel or hear. I'm not so much I'm doing the right thing or I'm on the right path or anything like that. It's just like I'm like a sick bitch. Like I'm a magical bitch. I said to my mum the other day, I was like a bit stressed. And I was like, I just want to be a magical bitch. And she was like, babe, you are. Like, deal with it. It was nice. You're a magical bitch too, Pisces Rising. And so hopefully right before this full moon, you'll just get a little pang of that. You'll be like, okay, 10th house, public facing self. It is what it is. And I'm a magical bitch. And then the full moon happens. We bask in it. Then on the 24th, Venus enters into Gemini. And then on the 26th, Jupiter enters into Gemini. And this is the changeover. This is the page that I was talking about that turns. Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the zodiac. You can see this similarity with Neptune through Pisces and now Jupiter back to Gemini. Our focus is pulled back to June 2012, July 2013 specifically. And it might not hit exactly for you. However, when I sort of was putting this astrology together, I was like, holy shit, wow. Because that period of my life was pivotal for my story, what I went through, what I experienced, what I rose above. Amazing, amazing period of history. Jupiter is not happy in Gemini. So we get a little real here. Jupiter loves it in Pisces, Jupiter loves it in Sagittarius. Optimism, anything's possible. Jupiter in Gemini is in the opposite house to which it's most comfortable and actually in square with Pisces. So there's conflict already. And so it can't work at its best potential, which Jupiter, like this, the image of it, it wants to grow, it wants to expand, it wants to magnify, to ignite, to propel. And so in Gemini, it does all of those things, but it does them to the Gemini parts of us. For us, Gemini is the fourth house, our home, roots, ancestry, privacy, where we've come from, what kind of home we're creating for ourselves. And Gemini is a sign that is incredibly intellectual, thoughtful, of the mind, in conversation, as twins do, at each other's throats, up each other's goats, all the time. Sometimes they're really harmonious. They can be sort of like, you know, sweet sisters. Sometimes they can be attacking one another. That's just the light and the shadow of Gemini. And so when Jupiter arrives in Gemini, it highlights the light and the shadow of Gemini. It exacerbates and expands all of this sort of internal dialogue or these arguments. So I wonder if in June of 2012 to July of 2013, there was something of an inner conflict that you were sort of feeling, maybe in relationship to some of these topics around home, around ancestry, where we came from, where we're going, where we're running away to. That was my experience. I was somewhere else in June 2012, and by July 2013, I was back on home soil. My moon's in Gemini too, and so that was another moment where it was sort of like, right, the eagle's landed. This is not your world. And so many huge things happened to me during that time, and a lot of it, the after effect, I'm resolving in my body and in my spirit now. And this isn't to say that this is all going to happen again, but what it is saying is that these topics around your home, roots, ancestry, your ability to create space for yourself, to create a home, where you came from as far as nurturing, all of these topics are moving around with Jupiter expanding and being like, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And some of it's really great, some of it's really effing difficult. And so we're going to do the best that we can with the information that we have. We're not going to be frightened of this astrology Pisces rising, because we also know that Jupiter is our spirit guide. And so we can roll with this. When I think back to 2012, 2013, I was rolling with it. Sometimes it was out of my control, but it got me back to a point where I was safe and where I was activated and where I was back in friendship with myself and on the road to becoming back in friendship with my body. So that's Jupiter in Gemini. Then on the 30th of May, I'll get you some tarot as I'm telling you this last bit. On the 30th of May, Mars, our bravery, comes into conjunction with Chiron, our pain. And this is all happening in our finances, values, what you're made of, what your talents are, what you're going to do to resource yourself. And this is story with these eclipses has been eyeballing that part of the Pisces rising chart, saying things like, you're useless, you don't have what it takes, you can't take care of yourself, you're pathetic, you'll always be poor, you're crap with money, it's too expensive, it's out of control, all of these sorts of things. Mars is great in Aries. Mars is right at home in Aries. Mars is like, fuck off in Aries. So maybe we can give some of these thoughts around our resourcefulness a bit of a fuck off on the 30th. Because then on the 31st, Mercury will be in exact conjunction, it's the same place as Uranus. So the rebel spirit in the witchy house of the goddess is rising with extra information, ready to serve. And then we get into June. And you have the High Priestess right in the center of this reading, Pisces rising. This is the magical bitch of the tarot, all right? You are. She lives in each and every single one of us, and she has the answer to every question you could ever possibly want to know in this life. The thing about the High Priestess, the fool meets her second, gets glamored by the magician first, and is like, I want more of that. Meets the High Priestess, who is more of a magical bitch than the magician, although she's quite a magical bitch too. High Priestess is like, learn for yourself. Your intuition is screaming out to your Pisces rising. There's a lot of guidance and advice that one needs in this life. Absolutely. At times, we already know it. In fact, mostly we already know it. In fact, in 2012 to 2013, we already knew it. But it took us trusting ourselves and trusting our animal instinct, a little trusting our gut, trusting our intuition to make a go of it, to protect ourselves. You know, how does a kid learn not to burn themselves on the fry pan? They touch it. Oh, ouch. Oh, hot. They know not to. That's okay. Hermit life is a great life, not forever. Step away from it. Get out of the cage. Move out into the world. Express yourself in the wide open spaces of your friendships, of your loved ones, of your community. Because this internalization of everything, all of the pain you're feeling on behalf of the global situation, all of the pain you're feeling on behalf of others in your relationship circles, everything that you're being given, it's just a given because you're a Pisces rising. You know how to deal with that. Move on through, move on out, claim your power, trust yourself, Pisces rising, and stop drinking so much. That's your reading. So much love to you, Pisces rising. I am cheering you on. This is a powerful full moon. This is not one that you need to feel that you can't measure up to. Wherever you are at is perfect right here, right now. You're a star. Love you. If you are still here with me, please put a colourful heart in the comments. I don't care what color. You can tell me what color you picked and why. That would be awesome. If you'd like me to draw your birth chart, they look like this. And you can make an appointment for me to read it to you at my website, umaruby.com. If I have read for you before and you'd like to see me again, you can pick a magic, truth, love, growth, or femme reading. Have a think about what those topics might conjure up for you. Do you need to know the truth? Do you want to talk about love? Do you want to grow? Do you want to refine your magic? Whatever it is, there's a reading there for that. We'll look at the astrology and we'll pull some tarot together and we'll go on a journey for an hour and a half. That's it from me. I'll be with you in a little while and we're going to speak about the seed that we can sow in our second house, in our fourth house in Gemini. We're sowing a seed about what we'd like our home to be, what we'd like our privacy to look like, what we wish for that area of our lives, how that area of our lives can protect us. And this time Jupiter's in the mix, so there's an expansive quality to this wish. So let's be thoughtful in our intention as we set it. I love you, Pisces Rising. And if you've not been drinking, if you don't drink, you understand what I mean by that last card. Stop numbing it out. Feel it. It's there to be felt. You're ready to feel it.